today I'd like to welcome Kevin to the second in our video series about lessons from lockdown and communication.
I'm Kevin Smith. I work for Yorwaste, which is a regional waste management company working in North Yorkshire and the City of York. We provide a range of waste management solutions from general waste through to recycling. And I look after the support services within the business, so HR, IT, assets, pretty much everything that supports the main part of the business to function. We went to what I call the two-dimensional world from the three-dimensional world. And we picked up all sorts of platforms, from video to chat channels to just picking up the phone. It was a little bit chaotic at first. You could have your mobile phone ringing, your landline ringing, your video conference call ringing, then someone WhatsApping you, FaceTiming you. And we lacked a bit of control initially, but then we narrowed it down to probably using Teams generally for video conference calling, and then just our mobile phones. And we've stopped people traveling around the county, which from an efficiency point of view has been fantastic. And it's one thing, I know we'll get onto it a bit later, but one thing that I'm really keen that we continue, because people were traveling an hour and a half, 2 hours for a half an hour meeting. The other thing I think on communications is we have become more structured. We were in a bad place of just almost falling into having little chats here and little chats there with whoever happened to be in the office at the time. And therefore the business wasn't necessarily, or people in the business weren't necessarily all informed, because 2 or 3 of us had a conversation in the office and we thought, oh, well, everyone knows now. Whereas now, because you've got to organise to have a call, we have structured our comms, so we have regular updates, which we probably didn't do. We were, as I say, we used to fall into our updates. And on the back of that, it's made people a little bit more accountable, because some people say, well, I can't make that meeting because at head office and I have got another meeting. Well, you can dial in with 30 seconds to go and still make the meeting. So people who maybe have been slightly shrinking violets and trying to fade into the background, don't want to attend to this and don't want to attend that, can't, because there is no reason that you can't just jump onto a call. So I think accountability is the other thing that I really noticed within the business has come to the fore, because people tend to take notes because they've got the laptop with them, and everyone's saying in the past, well, you said you were going to do that in a week, and no one, particularly it seems in the two-dimensional world, wants to be caught out having not done something. So yeah, we've seen some significant changes, some for the best. I think initially we lost all face-to-face contact, and I don't think that was a good place to be. And we are encouraging people to come back into the office. We're not certainly by any stretch of imagination forcing people to, but there's certainly an encouragement, because I think, and that might be from my background, but I think face-to-face contact will always be important. But I think we were over-reliant on that, and therefore we've become more accustomed to using other channels. A long-winded way, I guess, of saying we've changed.
I've had the pleasure of working with Kevin and his team now for quite a few years, so it's great to hear that sort of journey, Kevin, that you've been on. And I guess it was making me think, as you were talking, a bit around the having more of a structured communications plan, you know, which we talk about a lot with clients, having real clarity around what is the best method for communication. Because like you say, I think in those early days there were so many different types of technologies that people were playing around with, and finding the right one for the right one at the right time for the right message, I think is really, really important. We've been using WhatsApp a lot for more of that informal stuff, but then absolutely using Teams and other Zoom and other technologies. And yeah, great to hear as well, just supporting people, encouraging them to come back to the office. I think, Kevin, as well, because we've similarly opened that up now to people to say they can come back in the office, because we're really seeing people are missing that face-to-face human contact.
Yeah, especially from a mental health point of view, again, because that's something that fortunately we'd spent quite a bit of time prior to this investing in. I had a passion for it. My HR manager, Mary, had a passion for it. And we furloughed circa 52 of the 286 people. And although initially they were on 100% pay, you didn't take long to realize that, you know, why me? When am I coming back? Am I coming back? And there was a potential surge in mental health issues. We as a business could have done more for the people on furlough, and maybe it was a missed opportunity. I know Michelle and myself spoke about it, but I still don't think we did quite enough for those, because we think, well, you get 100% pay, you know, you're at home, the weather was glorious, what's not to like? And we were so focused on trying to save the business, because like all business, it was crisis time. We've come out of it well, but I just think with hindsight, we could have done a bit more there. But we did have a support mechanism in with an employee assistance program, which again, 2 years ago we wouldn't have had. And we were probably a bit more cognizant of people's mental health. And I am certainly now, and that's why, you know, come back into work, it is still there. There isn't sort of, you know, zombies at the door and all that. So, because we have people who are extremely nervous of it. And again, it's trying to understand that. I'm personally not for myself, but it's understanding that other people have different views on it. And it's just trying to balance that. So it's more cajoling, encouragement, as opposed to saying, right, you're going to do 3 days a week in the office. I'm not sure we'll ever get to that. I think this flexible working is here to stay, and I think that's a benefit to the business.
The point about accountability is really interesting. I'm sure similar to Michelle, I do a lot of work with boards around organisational development, and it's usually, I would say, in 90% of cases, the one thing that they want to improve. And I agree with Kevin. I think lockdown has really driven accountability, because for a lot of businesses as well, they've had to loosen some of the reins, and the autonomy that I often hear that businesses want to give to their employees, and sometimes employees feel reluctant to take it. I think it's had to happen. And I think a lot of businesses have been surprised at how much easier it's been than perhaps they thought. The whole element about trust, perhaps we all fear that it's not going to work, don't we? You know, the thing that people used to say to me when I talk about being flexible and working from home was, yeah, but they'll be watching the telly. Well, will they? I don't believe so. And even if they are, they'll probably work in the evening. I just don't think that's what drives performance and output at all. And the other thing I am just going to pick up quickly, because for people who've watched these videos, they're probably wondering where I am. And I do think it's worth sharing that I am in Greece. And I think that's the other learning from this, is that we can work remotely and it can be done. And I would never have thought that this was possible, to have a connection like this from this far away. But I do think it'll help us as businesses to be much more efficient. Coming back to Kevin's point about attending meetings and all the travel I used to do, all the travel lots of businesses did, we'll become much more efficient, I think, at dialing into meetings very quickly. And I agree that the hybrid is here to stay. I think it'll be a combination of face-to-face and virtual.
It's highly commendable that you have joined us for this video from Greece, first of all, Nat. But yes, I think if we can do this from Greece, then we can hopefully do it from anywhere. And I would love to be in Greece right now, but there we go. But yeah, thank you, Kevin. That was really helpful and insightful. I think the mental health thing is very interesting, and also the fact that I do agree, when we were all in crisis, it was really easy to forget people who were on furlough or whatever. But I'm glad to hear that you've come back, that the business has come through this and you're in a good shape now. I'm sure that was a lot of hard work at the time.
We've done all our DISC profiles, and people receive messages in a different way. And I think initially, again, you know, this thing certainly blindsided me. I remember speaking in sort of February and going, it's in China, it will never come to the UK, don't be ridiculous, everything will be fine and dandy. And then come the 23rd of March, everyone was running for the hills and back to their homes with their laptop under their arm. And that was a surprise. And we've had to, initially, again, we were messaging to the business, and now people have come back and have spoken to it. I think we almost needed the same message, but delivered in a different way. And we were trying almost because we were so focused on business stability, we should have maybe thought, right, here's one channel, one message. The message is the same, but how it's delivered is different. And it was almost press send. And we initially, and it was a bit of a sad reflection, I guess, and it's not until I came on here that I thought about it, is that we forgot some of the things that Michelle had taught us initially. Was we just, right, there's a message, have it. And when people had come back, they were saying, oh, crikey, that was really hard to hear. And that was pretty hard hitting. And I was like, yeah, that's because you weren't in the context necessarily, or you were isolated in your office in Whitby, or you were on furlough, or a multitude of reasons. And therefore, people had lost context of the message. And therefore, what seemed very clear to me when it particularly came out from our managing director, and he sent out regular briefings, and I, along with Richard, would check them to make sure that they seemed the right message. And we both, all three of us, sort of worked together to sort of shape the business. And I think we probably should have brought a couple of other people in, maybe not so involved in the crisis management, say, just check this, because to us it sounds sensible, but does it sound sensible to you? Because we had the full picture, and we didn't do that. And I think going forwards, we should have, and there were people that we could have called upon who would have given that sort of litmus test to it, to say, yeah, what you're saying in that message will be read in that manner, and we missed a trick there. So that was one piece, and almost aligned to that is your frequency that you message. At times, I think people got bombarded, and they were like, which is it, left hand or right hand? Because the government guidance was changing at such a rate or not. We were always trying to message at the same rate. And if we weren't confused, the poor staff at times were confused as well. So sometimes holding off on communication just for a little period to get that clarity, so you deliver a very clear message, I think we would have benefited from. We didn't want to not communicate with our staff, and I think at times we over communicated. Having that little moment just to pause and go, hold on a minute, let's just give it 24 hours, 48 hours, and then message. I think we would have delivered a more concise and a more easily managed sort of communications to the staff. And that's not just, it almost sounds like I'm talking about the people that weren't in the business. I am talking about the people that are still in the business, but were isolated geographically because they were tucked away in Whitby or down in Scarborough or over in Holme East. And they therefore missed the context of what we were all in.
When you're in a crisis, you lose perspective. And actually, I think the government did as well. Being a communications professional, I was like, oh God, you're making me cringe. You're so involved in the crisis, in the science behind all the stats and everything, that you've lost sight of just what a clear message looks like. I think it is really difficult, having had a lot of experience of internal announcements. I think it's very difficult to be objective. So yeah, it's a good thing to get external people from outside of the crisis team.
One of the things that I really have always really valued about Kevin and the team at Yorwaste is just how open and honest they are to kind of lessons learned. And it's great to hear the lessons that you've learned, Kevin. I mean, we, just thinking back to the work we've done over the last few years with you, it's very much been about building that trust and that connection together, hasn't it, as a team, which no doubt has probably really helped you with a lot of the things that you've been talking about, but also that reminding yourselves about the communication, how we all receive things so differently. That's such a great reflection and a great learn that you can take forward, I think, into the months ahead, I guess, as well.
That's almost key, is because Michelle's done sort of training at the sort of exec level and the senior management team level, and then we've had a future leaders group as well. They sort of were more tolerant to the communications bombardment, because I think they'd developed a trust in the people that were running the business. It was probably the wider community of the business that hadn't necessarily been exposed to the management team as much as they might have been and should have been, and therefore the trust hadn't been built up. Were more what are they really saying when they say that? And people will always, if there's a blank space, they fill it with whatever they hear. And Yorwaste is a fantastic place for a rumour. If you want to get a message around Yorwaste, you send it as a rumour and it goes around really quickly. But what concerns me is people fill the void if we didn't. But I think sometimes we just fill the void too quickly with people that didn't necessarily have the trust that we are trying to develop throughout the business.
I'm really interested in what you've said, Kevin. At the very beginning, there was an awful lot of panic around furlough as I saw it, and letters flying out of accountants' offices. I'm not going to go into detail around that. People know my views about using experts. But actually, I said to my clients, let's just pause and breathe and just wait kind of 24, 48 hours and be clear about what we're doing. And I think there's a difference between being proactive and being reactionary. And I completely agree that communication is important, but getting the wrong communication is deadly. And I was just thinking on Friday, I'm going to do a big piece of work around a really quite complex organisational change in a business. And we were ready to hit the button. And actually, I said, wait a minute, are we all absolutely clear on this? And we went through it again, and we weren't. And it probably looks a little bit like overkill, but something in my gut was telling me, I don't know that we are all on the same page. We checked it, and there were some differences in opinion. So we said, okay, let's come back to it Monday. It doesn't have to go at 3 p.m. on Friday. It can go on Monday at 10 o'clock. That's not that many hours difference. And plus Friday didn't feel right at all at 3 o'clock. And it's gone today, and that's fine. But I'm really glad we just took a breath. And I do think we should have confidence to do that in businesses.
It's as well just remembering as well, isn't it? There has been so much uncertainty, like you were talking about, Kevin, and sometimes it's okay to say to people, isn't it, we don't know yet. We're going to wait, we're going to pause, and when we do know, or when we've got a clear message, we'll come out. But letting sometimes people know that nothing's coming out, because that's when the gap gets filled, isn't it? If there's just no communication, sometimes it's almost that we are going to come out with something, we're gathering our thoughts, we'll get back to you, and making sure that it comes when you're ready and when it's right.
For me, I've been through changing cultures, and it's not done over 4 months. It's done over years. I think at the moment we're in a process of habits driven out by necessity. We've all had to dash home. We've had to allow the staff to work from home because there is no care for the children that they might have, or you can't come into the office. Traveling was banned, for want of a better description. What I'm keen is that some of the good habits, which I'll come on to, become ingrained in our business culture. And we're on the right road, but all too quickly now people say, oh, well, the culture's changed and we've done this and we've done that and it's all set in stone. I'm like, yeah, not yet, because we need to change it for the right business reasons. But having said all of that, I think the flexible working, I think, is one really key, and that's driven by trust, which we've talked about already. And I think the business is far more trusting, and I think that trust has been developed over the several years that we've been together as a team, but over the 4 months that we've been working at this as well, is that, you know, the accountancy team still, you know, process all the invoices, still GRM where they need to. Money's going in, money's going out, you know, and suppliers have been paid. So, oh yes, so the accountancy team can work from home because, you know, there's money in the bank and the suppliers aren't knocking down the door. So that works. The HR team, you know, we've done virtual sort of HR meetings, everything from disciplinaries to one-to-ones to, you know, the whole sort of a range of what we'd want to do. Sometimes a face-to-face is still required, and again, I've touched on that point, and I think we need this hybrid version of, you know, where you can and you don't have to travel around the county, go on to sort of a video platform, but don't be frightened about still going having the face-to-face. The other positive we've done, I was permanently, bizarrely based at head office, which was a 60-mile round trip from my house. I've moved to the York office, which is 16-mile round trip from the house. I can do exactly the same job. In fact, probably almost better from this site because it's our biggest site. So there's a management exec presence on the site. you know, most days of the week, so I can go out and see the guys and girls out in the business and find out what's going on. And, you know, other members of the exec team aren't just all, I'm not saying we were hiding, but we were all based at head office. And I think that's a real positive, because the management team has become more visible. And at times where it was really needed to be that visible sort of leadership. One of the reasons I could have gone and worked from home, I chose not to, because we've got a large percent of our workforce that had to come in. They had to be there. And myself and some of the other exec thought, we can't just go and work from home. We have to be visible. So, you know, we made a decision for people to move. I benefit from it because it's a shorter commute. It saves me some money. Hey, isn't that a good thing? The business benefits it from, though, because I'm here and, you know, managers on site and supervisors and just general sort of workforce have an opportunity to speak to me and say, well, what about this and why is that not working? And you get that sort of passive information. So I'm really keen that that stays. In fact, I've head of HR, I've changed my own contract, so I now work from York. Well done, me. I did get authority from the managing director to do that. So the one thing we are not in the right place is the face-to-face contact, because we haven't got there yet. And I think, as I say, we are trying to encourage people that it is safe with the right precautions. I actually don't want people necessarily sitting closer than 2 meters to me to have a conversation. I don't need that. We're not all cramming in sardines into the boardroom at head office. So, you know, we are inviting the right people to meetings, not just, well, you better come, and you better come, just in case someone happens to say something that you'll be interested in. So we've gone for that structure. We've got a much more structured output from the meetings, and that then cascades down through the business. But I still think we're probably again, I keep using this, two-dimensional. I'd like to see a few more people back in the business, getting out and about, because we were so heavily face-to-face. I think people have tolerated it for now, and we need to find the right balance for the business. So I think that's the keys for me, is we've got some good habits. We haven't changed the business culture, but I'm determined that we do, because we can do so much more work. One of my grave concerns, I guess, is from working from home is, and that is not necessarily a dig at you, but people then need to be very disciplined about turning off, because when I pick up my laptop and leave, you know, my office now, I can go home, and yes, if someone wants to phone me, they can do. But my wife works from home, and she'll be working from home at 10 o'clock. And you know, it's that discipline to say, right, enough's enough. And I think that's something that people need to educate themselves in, because they do not have that physical break of picking up the keys or getting on their bicycle or walking home. And that's something, again, from a mental health point of view, that we need to be very cautious about, because I know I slightly flippantly said that it's not working from home, it's sleeping at the office. And I think that would be a very dangerous place for people's mental health to get to, that you are always expected to be on call, because I think it also drives the wrong thought process, is that, well, I'll just pass it up the chain of command and they can make the decision. No, decisions should be made at the lowest level possible. So yeah, some good stuff, but a way to go to get the right balance from Kev Smith's view anyway.
The visible leadership, because I think that's something we've been talking about in this series with the three of us have been doing over the last few months, is how important that is, and that some leaders sort of hid away. And that isn't great from a, you know, when you're going through a crisis, but also from an engagement perspective, you know, getting your employees to feel really engaged. So great to hear that you've taken that opportunity as well to kind of be more visible as a leadership team in amongst the teams as well. And but the benefits that that's going to drive are many, by the sounds of it, not least, you know, that you're not traveling all over as well. I think your final point really struck me there as well. I've actually come back to the office last week So I've been working from home the last few months, and definitely that divide between finishing work and being at home, I've really struggled with at times, and very easily going into doing very long hours. Partly because we were going through a crisis, and I think a lot of leaders have had to work incredibly hard over the last few months, but it was just too easy to do that. And I think actually making the decision to come back to the office last week has really, really helped to kind of create that space. So I'm totally with you on that, that I think it will be about getting that balance, won't it? That having those days at home, you might do longer days, but you know, that it might fit in better from a work perspective and a home perspective, but having that balance of coming into the office as well, I think, and me being with people, especially managers and leaders, I think it's important to have that visibility as well. So great to hear that you're kind of taking those two things and thinking about how you take that forward. I've actually run quite a few sessions just over the last few weeks on how best to work from home, how to help sort of create that divide. And there are different things that you can do, different things that people can try, but it's very, very challenging when you are working from home. I think I don't think the problem we've been having is people not working hard enough. I think it's been the opposite, people doing too many hours. And so it's great we've got this trust, and that you've seen the benefit of trusting your people, but actually it's almost being a conscience to them as well.
I'm now in a crisis, but that's one habit that doesn't want to become expected, and we need to people are different and people will work differently, and I think we should embrace that, because we are all different, we're all individuals, but I think as a business we just need to be conscious that that person is not always on the end of the phone just for that sort of check that am I making the right decision. Have the confidence, you know what you're doing, that you can make the right decision, and if the decision goes wrong, then the business needs to go, okay, so that went wrong. Going forward, let's think about doing it next time, as opposed to, you know, throwing their arms up and getting all sort of cross about it, sort of thing. And I think we are better as a business for that. We want people to make the decision at the lowest level, because that gives us speed and agility to look forwards, whilst, you know, the team that can manage the business or run the business on a day-to-day do, while the rest of us look forwards on a more strategic level as to what's next.
Culture piece that you talked about, Kevin, has fascinated me, and I got into a really healthy debate with others from my profession, the CIPD. I was running a session on organisational development, and my view is that culture is not something that is quickly put in place or fixed, whatever that quite means. And quite rightly, I got a really good challenge that said, but that's what's happened in COVID. Cultures have changed. And I've said, I'm not sure they have. I think if you scratch below the surface, it's a superficial change, because we all know that for change to really stick and be sustainable in a culture, it has to come from within, and it has to come from across, and it has to be a motivation that comes from within, not an external force. An external force can be, if you like, a mechanism or a trigger, but I don't believe a lot of the change that happened at the beginning of COVID is one that will necessarily stay without work happening around it. And so the culture piece is fascinating. And you've both said what I would have said around visibility, so I won't labour the point on that. And the mental health is one that I found really interesting. At the beginning of COVID, mental health was everywhere, on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Facebook. Everyone was talking about it. And then I noticed around the end of May, beginning of June, it seemed to stop being everywhere. And of course, that for me has to be one of the learnings and positives that we take out of this, is that, as you said right at the beginning, Kevin, everyone is an individual. We all have emotions. We all have different responses. And mental health, good mental health, is something that we should do every day. And I really hope that's the lesson that we take out of this, that we keep good practice. And just on that, I'm not working all of my holiday, so please don't think I'm a hypocrite. I'm not working all of my holiday, but I made some commitments. But I have spent plenty of time in the pool today. And Michelle and Rachel know very well, I am very, very disciplined in taking downtime. I learnt the hard way when I was a chief exec, and my health suffered. I was on 24 hours, 7 days a week. I'll never, ever do that again.
Thank you very much for all of the fantastic insights from Yorwaste. yeah, it sounds like there'll be some changes, but it's just going to be a gradual development of some of the new things back in with the old way of working as well. So there's obviously been good things that you did before as well. Sort of like a balancing act, but trying to find a way forward that brings in the new and makes the most of the other things that you had before in a business. That I'm finding that in my own business, but also in those ones that I'm working with as well.
Just so great to see, you know, the difference when you've got a team who are so focused on themselves. You know, you've done so much work, Kevin, as a team on your leadership and your communication, how you work together. And I think, you know, that's when a crisis hits, that's when you see people really coming into their own. And I think, you know, I've heard so many great things about what Yorwaste have been doing. So yes, yeah, okay, you might say there's things that you could do even better, there always are. But actually, I think there's a lot for you to be really proud of about what you've done over the last few months as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, you know, Michelle, we had a roadmap to improving our business, you know, how we worked as a team, you know, trust, communications. I think this crisis has allowed us to accelerate down that road in a good way. And it's just, you know, it's making sure that they then stick in going forwards. That will be our biggest challenge. But I think it's a challenge that we are, you know, as a business ready to meet. And there's an enthusiasm for it, which is always helpful.